Welcome to Diced Onion, a Warrior podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Angelo Fioris. That's Mike Haggerty. Welcome to our semi-weekly look at the incredible show called Warrior. Mike, Warrior climbing up the charts on Netflix. That's great news.
Yeah, hit the like button. I've been doing it.
Yeah, every time I've watched it so far, I've definitely made sure to like. And it certainly appears that other people are doing the same now because I'm seeing that it's showing up in the US rankings of top shows as well as globally now. It's beginning to show up. So fingers crossed that this next couple of weeks, month or so, delivers the news that we're hoping to hear, which is Netflix green lights another season 4.
Yeah, I need some resolution here. I can't be left hanging. we need to see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And let's talk about what happens. We're now season 2, episode 9, Mike, next to last episode of this season. This one called Enter the Dragon, which I love that right off the bat. We haven't had many direct Bruce Lee homages in the last few episodes. There are not too many even in this season, not as many as season 1. So it was nice to see something as obvious as this one.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, you could tell that they do respect their heritage, so to speak, by doing that. That was fantastic. That was a nice touch. And by the way, this episode is chock full of homages, by the way. So we're going to get to that.
All right, awesome. This episode originally aired on November 27th of 2020. I think that was the day after Thanksgiving. And I'm very thankful for this episode. It begins with opening scene, pre-credits. It's Jacob. And right away, we realize it is a flashback to the tussle at the mayor's, the scene that led to the mayor's demise. And it's the aftermath of Jacob braining the mayor with the poker mic.
Yeah, and this is where I brought this up last week, but I have the girl in the horror movie vibes who opens the door that you don't want them to open, and I'm like, we see Jacob. Now we're seeing this from Jacob's point of view, right?
Right. And when he sees Sophie out cold, and then Penny and Jacob have a conversation here. They're actually debating how to handle this situation and what to do. And she's talking about how, I'll tell them what happened, that you were acting in self-defense. And Jacob very quickly is like, Mrs., that's not going to do anything to help me at all. And that's when it dawns on her very quickly. She's being a little foolish with that kind of thinking. And she gives Jacob money. She tells him to take off to go to the train station. And then and it tells him to lay low and get moving. While she tries to figure out what she's going to do. And then that's when he does what you said, takes off first and goes to Chinatown, and we realize he has a sick mother.
Well, yeah, Penny was clearly naive in this situation because she's looking at it from her perspective. She is a woman from well-to-do status. She's a white woman, right? She's a duck.
Yep.
And she doesn't fully understand this world. That's clear. And we know that from her sister Sophie too, who doesn't understand the world of the Irish or the lower class, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a great point. Penny is very Pollyanna in many ways. Her name is kind of appropriate. She has a different view of the world, one that doesn't jibe with the reality around her, even though, Mike, she's fully aware of the reality around her. She has voiced that several times when arguing with the men of state here. So she's not ignorant to what's going on, even though she was raised to be wearing white gloves in a sense.
And do you think that she's sort of in this scene, sort of realizing that she had you could almost say it was a sense of entitlement that, don't worry, I'll get you out of this. My word will get you. But she realizes that even her word as a white woman from a well-to-do status, from a good status, it's not going to be good enough to get him out of this situation.
Yeah, I think she realizes it the minute Jacob tells her that. He's like, Mrs., I killed the mayor. They're going to be looking for me. And so that's, her realization was giving him the money and telling him to take off because she was like, you're right. I can't help you either.
But I'm thinking in a broader sense, you think she's realizing that at the end of the day, she's just a woman in this world?
I think that she has for her, that realization has come episode by episode. And this kind of puts the cherry on top of that you're right. I am helpless in this situation. And then Jacob takes his leave and he goes to Chinatown, visits we quickly surmise is his mother, and she's not doing well physically. She's ill. And he tells her that he's going to have to leave. So he's also now dealing with the fact that he's officially on the run, Mike.
He's on the lam, and in my head, I just kept going, okay, go see your mother. Fine.
Yeah.
Get the hell out of town.
Right.
Go. But he didn't.
No, he didn't. He gives his mother a little bit of money. He's got that wad of cash that Penny gave him, and he like takes out like maybe half of it or something, shoves it under her pillow, and he takes off and hits the streets again. But now, Mike, the cops are already out there. They're crawling all around Chinatown, and Jacob panics here in a little bit.
Yeah, he's kind of staying in his familiar turf. He's staying in Chinatown. And we also know from previous episodes that right away they don't even really know what he looks like, although there is a wanted poster eventually. But initially they didn't know what he looked like.
Right.
And as Chief O'Hara said himself, I think in the last episode, I can get you Chinaman, right?
Might not be this one.
Yeah, but we'll get you one, not a problem, but we won't get you the right one. So he's running around town and he's just trying to hide out, which I think he's already at this point he's made a major mistake.
Yeah, he should have gotten the hell out of there immediately and found a different way to get that money to his mother. Definitely a flaw in his escape plan. And while he's running from the police now, hiding, panicking a bit, he's looking for a place to hide, as you described. And he does find a window, sort of a basement window with like a gate on it. And he's able to kind of jimmy it and open it and crawls in. And that's where he kind of is hiding. And then we're seeing him sort of, I guess it's almost like a montage of him surviving in this basement. I don't know, over the course of time. I'm getting the sense it's maybe an overnight at best.
Overnight, maybe at best a couple of days, maybe pushing it, but probably not even that long, actually. No, now that I think about it, probably wasn't that long because Chow discovers him fairly quickly.
Yeah. So we see his little montage of survival in a sense, and we see that he's like in a rat-infested basement. He's got a piece of fruit that he's eating for survival, and he's capturing rainwater in a tin can outside the window. He's got a can outside the window. It's raining. He collects rainwater and he brings it back in to drink so that he does not dehydrate. And while this is all happening, the police, you could see police footsteps like crawling across like the line, the ground line of the basement window. And this is when Chow finds him.
Yeah, well, this is interesting because we've seen this from the other side. Now we're seeing it from Jacob's side. We've seen it from Chow's side. We've seen it from Penny's side. Now we're seeing Jacob's side.
This is sort of where last week left off, and this week kind of picks up where the stories merge finally.
Right. And Chow walks in, and Chow doesn't want anything, understandably, to do with this situation. He wants him gone. He doesn't want to be involved, and it's understandable. I mean, he's killed the mayor. That's pretty big.
Yeah, Jacob asks for help, and Chow says, "I can't help you." And Jacob's response was, "I'm not a murderer." Chow said, "I don't care." And that was immediately Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones to me right there. That was awesome because Chow even delivered the line the exact same way that Tommy Lee Jones did. And Chow gets right into, "I don't know you. I'm not doing business with you. I don't like to do this with people I know," in a sense. And that's when Jacob flashes the cash. And Chow's mind changes right away.
Yeah, which I was a little surprised at. I thought, wow, Chow kind of changed on a dime there because he said you don't have enough money, but I guess he did.
Yeah, he says you don't have enough money to pay me, but a wad of bills in 1878 or whatever goes very far. I guess not too many people carrying a wad of bills. So he shows Chow the money, and Chow decides to kind of help him out a little bit. But how? Right? That's what they're now talking about.
Right. And Chow comes up with a very creative solution. He also has one of the few humorous lines in this episode. They're going to ship him out with the dead bodies that they typically, I guess, ship back to China, back to the Chinese mainland. And Jacob says, I don't want to be in a coffin on a ship. And he goes, "Would you prefer to be in one on the ground here?" Yeah,
the line actually goes, "I can't go all the way to China in a coffin." And Chow says, "You can stay here in a coffin." It was a great line. Obviously, Chow has done this before because he knew right away what he would do. And he told him, "You have to go back to China. It's the only way for you because they will not let up until you are caught and dead. So Jacob quickly resigns himself to the fact that it's going to have to be the coffin plan. And quickly it becomes sunup. The scene changes rapidly. Jacob's already in the coffin. You could see little cracks of light sort of coming through the slats on the top of the coffin, and he's already I would too, Mike. He's inside this coffin and he is panicking.
Well, I mean, think about it also in another sense. What's everyone's number one fear, right? Being buried alive, or that's in the top five for a lot of people at least.
Wow.
So, I mean, imagine being in a closed coffin. That's if you have any sense of claustrophobia, that right off the bat, that's not a good.
If situation. You don't have a sense of claustrophobia, you'll have one when that's all over with.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, but now the question is, how do they find it though?
Well, that's when the whatever his coffin is being transported in a horse-drawn carriage, obviously, and everything comes to a stop, and the coffin gets cracked open, and it's Sergeant O'Hara and another cop, and Bill says, well, he doesn't look very dead to me, does he? And that is kind of where the scene finally ends, right? And when the scene picks up again after the credits, by the way, Mike, a very long pre-credit scene. I kept thinking to myself, wait, when did the credits run? We're 7 minutes into this, and it was still the pre-credit scene.
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
I really did love that. And when the credits ended, the story picks up right there. It doesn't go very far. It's Jacob now being handcuffed, and Officer Lee begins casting his doubt as usual on Bill's version of sleuthing with a comment something like, so you got your man again, huh, Bill?
Yeah, and he points out how for a guy who doesn't like police work, he's pretty effective at it.
Right. That's a great line. For a man who doesn't care a lot about police work, you work fast, he says to Bill. And Bill admits here that it wasn't necessarily great police work, but Buckley gave him a tip, he says.
Right.
So now you just asked, how did they know? Buckley told them. But how does Buckley know? Interesting, right? We're going to unravel that as we go along here. But Lee doesn't trust Bill. But Bill is fine with it. He's like, hey, I don't care where the tip came from. I'm good with it.
Yeah. I mean, Bill is all about results. He doesn't necessarily care how he gets them.
No. And this is where Lee drops one of his homespun phrases on him and says, you know, you found your man faster than a scalded cat.
That foghorn leghorn logic.
Yeah, I say now you find that boy faster than a scalded cat. I say. That's accurate, Mike. And you know, this is where Bill turns the tables on him, and I guess it's probably an old Irish saying. He says, "You like your homespun sayings so much. Here's one for you: don't dig up more snakes than you can kill." Which I kind of was like, what? Okay. And off they go, you know? And now they're off to take Jacob, assumingly to the police station. He's in a cage that's being drawn by, he goes from one horse-drawn carriage to another one, but either way, he's locked up. So not much has changed there. And this is where we notice Chow and Mai Ling watching from a semi-distance, Mike. And I guess now we found out exactly how Buckley found out to tell Bill who found out.
Yeah, it's clear that Chow told Mai Ling, and she went to Buckley.
Yeah, he ratted out on her, and he's instantly regretful. We can see the regret, you know, on Chow's face, and Mai Ling is kind of like, hey, you know, you should not feel bad about what you did because they were going to just keep raining down on Chinatown.
Right. And she makes a good point there. But what I'm wondering, my question, which I don't know if I got the answer to this, was why did he go to her unless she was part of the transporting of bodies? And maybe this is something, well, obviously we know this is something he's done before, but maybe he's done it with her, in concert with her, and he had no choice but to go to her. But it just seems like, I mean, he had to know in some sense. I mean, if I were him, I wouldn't entirely trust Mai Ling in this situation.
I don't think he trusts Mai Ling, Mike, and I'm wondering what it was exactly that compelled Chow to feel like he had to even bother to tell Mai Ling as opposed to just helping Jacob get to the boat. Because the one thing that Chow says to Mai Ling is that man paid me to help him.
And that made me flash back to the negotiations with in season one with Feng Hai and Long Zi, and that was when we first saw Zing,
Yeah.
and with the Long Zi, they decimated the Feng Hai leadership anyway. And again, that was an example of when Chow gave his word on behalf of Long Zi or Mai Ling, so to speak, and she kind of burned him, and she
And he
did it
flipped.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure exactly why he needed to tell Mai Ling, but I certainly understand why Mai Ling did what she did to tell Buckley, which I'm sure she revealed to him in one of their little horse-drawn fireside chats. You know what I mean?
Right. And as much as I have sympathy for Jacob, yeah, fireside chat. And as much as I have sympathy for Jacob in this situation, at the same token, I can understand where Mai Ling's coming from because a lot of people are going to pay for what he did.
Right.
And if there's a price to be paid for it, it should be, whether you agree with it or not, should be the person who actually committed the act. In this case, it was Jacob.
Yeah, it's not like Jacob didn't kill the mayor, but the problem is the circumstances really don't make him a killer like Jacob himself said so. But you know what? It doesn't matter. On the surface is what matters, and how this appears is the most important. And right now, getting their man is going to take the heat off Chinatown faster than helping him get out of the country. And so that's exactly what happens here. Mai Ling tells Chow he did the right thing. Now we're seeing the cops escorting Jacob, and there's the working man, the Irish guys sitting about, the ones that aren't working. They're sitting around drinking and being angry, and they see what they know they see, right? The cops pulling the Chinaman in a cage, and that's enough for them to start to get riled up, Mike.
Yeah, because right off the bat, they see he's being escorted in the cage by several officers, and this has to be a unique situation because they probably typically there would just be one cop per man, I'm assuming, or something like that. So they know this is something special.
Yeah. They see Bill. They see, first of all, cops that are of authority, being there, as well as like the drone cops, right? And the ringleader of the Irish guys, and it's not Leary in this case, it's another dude, Tully or Tooley. He says to Bill, word is you got the guy, the slant that killed Blake, and Bill tells them just taking him to ask some questions and tries to maintain calm. But it's starting to turn into an angry scene, Mike, and they've only got one thing on their mind, the Irish guys.
Yeah, they are looking for they're looking for their own brand of justice.
Exactly. Street justice. And it's starting to look like a lynching to me almost, Mike, the way this breaks out into a big fight. The cops are outnumbered right now. Not a good situation.
And remember a couple of weeks ago when we talked to Perry Young, and he was talking about we all know about the lynchings in the South of Black people, but it also occurred with the Chinese as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we see exactly that. All hell at this point has broken loose. The cops are getting clobbered. They're getting a shot or two in on their own, but it is not enough. And it's not very long before we realize as viewers, Mike, that Jacob doesn't stand a chance.
And notably, the cops are refraining from using their guns.
Yeah, Lee, I think it was, pulled out his pistol. Maybe it was a different officer, and Bill shouted, no weapons, no guns. We don't want to be killing our own right here on the streets like that. So again, it's really weird. Like they're trying to manage justice from the law and order side of things by taking the suspect in for questioning, but then they're allowing, in a sense, some form of the street justice to stand because they don't want to take it to the ultimate in having to brandish a weapon that could kill one of them. It's weird. Like we don't want to kill our own over some Chinese. That's, try to wrap your head around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly a racial component. We see the cops are not immune to that.
Yeah. And so the cops get pummeled. Eventually, the Irish guys bust open the cage and they drag Jacob out, and they proceed to now beat him mercilessly.
Yeah. And I had this was tough to watch. I had a lot of sympathy for Jacob. I like him as a character. Yeah. And this was tough to watch. This whole scene was very tough to watch.
Yeah. It was a very real feeling from this scene, Mike. The hatred was dripping off of the screen, the anger, Jacob's fear dripping off the screen as well. And then the scene cuts away, Mike, and we see Leary and Sophie. Remember, she was there from earlier when she told Leary that the mayor was dead. And I guess she was asleep, and she wakes up and they're starting to hear the commotion outside. And it's a really quick scene because it cuts right back to the violence, the assault on Jacob. And this is where there's nothing the cops can do. The rope is out and the lynching continues.
Right. And we see poor Jacob. He's being strung up. And I got a little piece of trivia here, actually, a note from IMDb about this scene. I don't know if you know about this, but the actor Jacob, actor Kenneth Falk, who I think that's how you pronounce his name, F-O-K,
Okay.
who plays the role of Jacob, injured his neck in that scene while performing the hanging. In fact, apparently he was in control as the actor. He was in control of the rope and how tight it was. But to make the scene more realistic, he actually made it even tighter, and he increased the tension of the rope by pulling himself to the limit of losing consciousness in order to make it look as realistic as possible. He injured his neck and his throat.
Wow, amazing reach for an actor there to go that far for his craft and to put himself in actual harm to nail it in a sense. And he does truly nail it. Leary hears the commotion and he steps out of the Banshee to see what's happening here. And that's when we see Jacob begging as he gets hanged. Sophie comes out as well, and she sees this and cries for them to stop, but it's too late. And the Irish are having a great cheer over this, aren't they?
Yeah, mob mentality has taken over, and
yep,
they've lynched this man. I mean, unfortunately, we know this is accurate in history, even if this particular hanging wasn't. But this is a very ugly scene. Historical context here, again, as we heard from Perry Young, and we all know, anyone who's taken a history class in American history, we know this stuff happened, unfortunately. And I got to say, this was one of the tougher scenes for me to watch in the show. I'll put this up there with Damon, with when he got beat to death for some reason. That bothered me.
Yeah.
So this is one. I mean, we see people get sliced and diced in this show all the time, and quick knife cut or gun or something like that doesn't. But this was tough. Plus, Jacob is such a sympathetic character. It was tough to watch. I
agree, Mike. That's what makes it harder to watch when at least Damon had it kind of coming to him, right? Jacob was one of the more, I don't know, I guess, least threatening characters on the show, and certainly didn't deserve to go out the way that they did. Leary now spirits Sophie away from this mob scene back to the Banshee. And this is where she turns the tables now and kind of starts laying into him a little bit and says, hey, they killed him and you did nothing to stop it. And Leary doesn't like that at all to hear that from her, does he?
No. And he points out, and I agree, he was the only one perhaps in the whole show who really understood this situation for what it was.
Right.
No one, the cops, the Chinese, the gangsters, and even the Irish didn't understand. But Leary, I think he was the head of the curve on this one. And again, thinking practically, if not morally, Leary understood the situation, that this was an inevitability.
Exactly, Mike.
And this was bigger than one man first stop. And he points out correctly, hey, I saved you. He got her out of, and if this had been like, I imagine if this was O'Harry, it'd be like last week with Sami goes the word in that pause there. You should have said thank you.
Supposed to say thank you, right?
Yeah, right.
Two things Leary says to her was, "Hey, that was going to happen no matter what happened to Jacob." And the second thing he says was, "This is not the end of it. This was a goddamn reckoning. So just be ready, because this is not over by any stretch." And again, like you said, Leary's the one who understands the situation as well as anybody, with his perspective from all these angles. And this is where now he's just about had enough of Sophie. And now he lays into her as well. And he says a couple of really jagged things to her. He says, go back to your high castle and pretty things, because you're nothing but a tourist here, just taking in the fucking sights. Well, now you've seen them all.
And Mr. Leary, you speak for all of us.
He really does. And he sent her on her way, deservedly so. In a sense, though, it's kind of, he got what he needed out of her, and he's done with her as well. And for Leary, it was his own reckoning that this girl and I are like oil and water, and we do not belong together. Get out. And he throws her out.
They weren't peas and carrots like Jenny and Forrest.
Yeah, exactly. So now we are back outside, And the Irish are screaming out there, victorious, screaming about how they had to do the cops' job and let's keep doing the cops' job. And now they're an angry mob, and they take off. And we know that they are heading to Chinatown.
Right. And actually, I also got another tidbit here from IMDb,
Yeah.
because this actually was based or inspired by a real event that occurred in San Francisco in 1877. It was a 2-day riot that broke out between the people of Chinatown and a group of Irishmen, and it went on. Yeah, it went on for about 2 days.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't have much more detail than that, but it was a 2-day riot in 1877 in San Francisco between the Chinese and the Irish.
Wow. So makes sense that some of this is actually, you know, based in reality. When the mob heads towards Chinatown, Lee actually follows them, and Bill's like, Lee, but Lee's not listening, and Bill's like, oh, bloody hell, and now he follows, and then you see the other cops like begrudgingly, and so now they're all following the mob scene as well, and it's not going to be good. Now we're back to Chow and Mai Ling. And this is actually where they have that discussion about the fact that Jacob trusted Chow and Chow turned him in. I gave the guy my word. And then she turns the tables on him a little bit, doesn't she? And she says, well, what about Zing? You turned on him too. So, Chow, while he likes to position himself as the free agent and the man who serves all, he really serves himself first, Mike, and he won't be afraid to double cross if needed. So he's not as trustworthy as or virtuous as he wants to claim to be, Mike.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this show, because there's no really true black and white. It's all shades of gray here, because everyone is a little bit dirty, although I have said previously, and I still maintain that Lee and Penny to some degree are the moral center of the show, but everyone's got a little dirt in them. Everyone's had to make tough choices. And the choices you have to make in real life when you're caught in between a proverbial rock and a hard place. So like, I kind of like in this episode, listening to Mai Ling talk to Chow about it made sense.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't have other people paying for what he did.
Yeah.
And Mai Ling or throwing it back in Chow's face about Zing. Again, he did betray Zing. Now, did Zing deserve it? Yeah, I think most viewers would agree. But he did betray him.
Yeah.
Even if you betray someone who deserves it, you still betrayed them.
Absolutely. And no sooner does she get the point across that what we did here, we did for Chinatown, that here comes the mob. And Chow and Mai Ling scramble to get the hell out of there while the riot begins. And it's beatings, it's destruction, it's the overturning of stalls, the smashing of windows, the fires, and let's face it, Mike, the majority of the residents of Chinatown are these little meek shopkeep type people and non-threatening type of people, just hoping for a better situation for themselves. And these are the ones bearing the brunt now of this angry Irish mob.
Yeah, well, mob mentality, right? They're going to pick the easy targets, the soft targets, so to speak. The shopkeepers, they're not looking for the tongs.
Nope.
No. You never see that. But yeah, it's the ugliness of mob mentality. It's a little bit of racism, bigotry, xenophobia. Yeah.
Well, like you said, though, they don't go looking for the tongs. They're looking for the little guy to beat up. But the tongs notice them. And that's where we catch Hong, Young Jun, and Assam seeing this from like a block away. And that's when Young Jun says, go get everybody. That's it. Go get everybody. And let's dice these dudes.
Didn't he say something like he was sort of deciding what to do? And didn't Assam have sort of a funny line where he goes, I'm glad I'm not the boss again, or something like that?
Yeah, it was right at this point. This is exactly where he says it to him. He says, we're going to dice these dudes. We got to bring in an army. And that's when Assam says, I'm glad I'm not in charge. That was his very next line. And it's a funny line for a couple reasons, partially because a lot of people already believe Assam is in charge. So Here's him outwardly saying he's not, or selectively glad he's not calling the shot here. But Assam makes another good point, or maybe it was Young June now at this stage, which is we have to do something about this. We can't just let this happen. And the comment was something like, I think we live in their world, but they're going to die in ours.
Yeah.
Right. What a great line. And so now they're mentally preparing themselves. They're waiting for their reinforcements to come before they make their move. And we start seeing other Tong members start to show up, including Long Zi, including Li Yang.
Yeah, and what was so cool about this, you saw all the groups coming together, right? They're not Tongs right now. They're not different factions. They're all just Chinese.
Yeah, man. And when Li Yang walked up and he sees what he sees, and he sees that they see what he sees, it's like an unspoken alliance is immediately formed. And Li Yang looks over to Assam, and they both do the knowing nod, right? And it is on. And here come the Tongs, Mike, and the nature of this Irish run riot, the momentum of it instantly shifts.
Yeah. Now we got the main event.
Yes, we do. And the battle rages. And let's face it, the Irish guys are tough thugs, but they are not skilled fighters. And that is evident in the methods in which both sides are employing to try to pummel each other here.
I think sort of the tacit understanding you have as a viewer is that the Irish are going to be basically brawlers, and that the Tongs are going to be martial arts. And martial arts, it's like the early days of UFC. Remember when UFC, you'd have different disciplines against each other. You'd have like a wrestler against a martial artist, and it was kind of like, I was sort of flashing back to that when I was watching the scene. I was like,
that's the early days. Butterbean versus like a
Gracie brother or something. One of the Gracie.
So while this fight is now ongoing, Mike, and the Tongs are now involved, so are the cops. Officer Lee is in there. He's cracking a couple of heads when he gets a chance, but he also gets attacked himself by the ringleader of this entire scene that started back when Jacob was being carted through the streets. And that's where Lee finds himself in an unenviable situation now, cornered.
Yeah. And he's not shy about using force, and he pulls his gun. And what I thought was kind of interesting about this scene was that he actually, Tully, was it?
Tully, I think it was Tully,
yeah. And he shot Tully a few times, and this made me think of like a zombie movie or a TV show, like The Walking Dead, because he shot him like 3 or 4 times. He was like still standing. I mean, I guess maybe in real life with those type of weapons back in the day, with enough adrenaline, maybe he could have stood up for a little, I guess, but it was a little bit. I was like, hey, I have expected him to just yell brains.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't go down right away. It was almost like a. and he wasn't exactly about to fall, and yet you figured that first shot should have been enough for him to drop, right? But it wasn't. He eventually does go down, and the fight around Lee continues. We see Mai Ling and Chow sneaking around. They find a way to hide. They slip through an open door, and where are they? They're in Atoy's, and of course Mai Ling doesn't like this. She's actually got like a comment about it, like, oh, a brothel, really? Like, you're running for your life right now. Wouldn't any shelter be better than no shelter?
Yeah. Listen, pick your spots.
Jeez.
Yeah. So yeah, she's not happy about that. Plus, she probably knows that it's a Toy's place.
Yeah.
We know there's a little bit of tension between her and Atoy.
Yeah, for sure. And when they walk in there, it's Chow, it is Mai Ling, and there's like Atoy's main like guard dude, the bigger guy. And that's when Chow asks him, where is Atoy? He says she's upstairs. And they go upstairs to find her, and they see her in her post battle with the butcher's state, right? She is absolutely she's cut, she's bloodied, her face is puffy, and she is in a bad way.
Yeah, well, we know what that's from last week with the butchers,
right?
And she's still recovering from that. Now we see the extent of her injuries, and I'm not sure in the timeline how much time has passed, but obviously she's in very bad shape, and and that becomes a sort of a separate topic. And
she has a good line here.
Yeah. Well, what was it again?
Well, Chow says to her, "What happened to you?" And she says, "Believe it or not, I won
Oh
the fight."
yeah.
Through her beat up state and her painful haze, she notices Mai Ling with him and says, "What is she doing here? Excuse me if I don't bow."
Yeah, and that harkens back to that previous episode.
Yeah, remember that scene that uneasy scene they had together?
Yeah.
Shoot, at least 4 or 5 episodes ago.
Yeah. But Mai Ling, I mean, we see this episode actually everyone is sort of transitioning. They're not gangsters anymore, they're just Chinese.
Yeah,
And Mai Ling sees that Atoy has injuries that needs to be tended to, and we now learn that Mai Ling has some background in treating field injuries from her warlord husband, and
right.
she treated I guess his tongue, and so she begins to assist her in that because everyone's just sort of helping each other now. Now we're not gangsters at this point.
Yeah, it's one of those things where she says, "Hey, I have experience patching wounds." And it's funny when she says, when she starts checking her out, she asks Atoy, "How many were there?" "Only two," she says. She says, "Only two," and she goes, "Big motherfuckers." And that's where the scene ends. We now cut back to the battle raging outside, and we see one of the shopkeepers try to defend himself with a pair of nunchucks, and as he tries to swing them, the Irish guy kind of grabs him, but that's where Assam comes in and he snags him from him, yanks him out of his hand, and just proceeds to continue to just like whip a bunch of ass.
Now, do I need to say it?
Go ahead.
What this is an homage to?
Go ahead.
I mean, this is on the nose, but Bruce Lee with the nunchucks, who probably introduced nunchucks to Western audiences in the early 70s.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that anyone probably knew what they were before that. And
I would agree with that.
Yeah, so we see him displaying a Bruce Lee like technique. So this is an homage, and I'm just going to say from this point forward, all of Assam's fighting in the rest of this episode is just a complete homage to Bruce Lee.
Absolutely, Mike. It turns into just it's like one big martial arts movie the rest of the way here. The funny part of this scene is when after Assam lays down the beating with the nunchucks, he's holding them in his hand, clutched, and he turns to the shopkeeper and he goes, "Can I borrow these?" Now the Irish are busting into Atoy's. They've broken through the doors. They've breached the threshold and they're in. And Chow shoots, and he fires away, trying to defend and stand his ground. While Mai Ling and Atoy are upstairs talking, while Mai Ling is kind of sewing her up. Chow can fight, by the way. We notice he's holding his own for a minute there, isn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think we talked about this last week about have we ever seen Chow really defend himself and use physicality? But clearly he does know how to defend himself. And I guess growing up as a slave in Cuba, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then being in this world, well, I mean, Chow has clearly had to come up the rough way, and he's learned to defend himself. I mean, is he the skilled fighter that Assam is? Clearly not, but he does know how to defend himself with a gun and with his hands.
Yeah, exactly. And he and Atoy's main dude, I wish I knew that character's name, the big guy, they managed to brutally kill the
big motherfucker
Irish. Yeah, the big motherfucker. They managed to brutally kill these invading Irishmen and hold off the threat for the moment. We're now back outside, the battle raging on, and we've got a gory and bloody young June on the ropes now, and he is in trouble.
Yeah, and this actually turned out in a weird way one of the as close to a heartwarming scene as this episode got. This was as close to heartwarming as you might see, but yeah, he's laid out. There's an Irishman. He's pointing a gun at him, but then Father June makes the save.
Yeah, out of nowhere, Father June saves him and prevents him from being shot and killed. What are you doing here? Or something, young June says, or you're not supposed to be out here. And Father June says, but you're glad I am, aren't you?
Yeah. And that's their version of having little old.
That's a father-son bonding moment right there.
That's playing catch and Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner and Ray Liotta right there.
Remember that time? Remember that time I killed that guy that was about to kill you? When Daddy hit the referee with the whiskey bottle? Sophie returns to Penny. She's now back at the mayor's house. Penny is still sort of in shock, right? She's not exactly herself. And she reports to Penny that Jacob is dead. And she says, the entire world has gone mad, to Penny. And Penny's response, nope, this is the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is where Penny's like, like you said, Penny had the realization earlier that she's kind of got no power. This is a further validation of that, where no, the world hasn't gone mad. It's always been mad, and we're just lost causes here.
Back to Penny a second, just to go back to what I was saying earlier, because it just dawned on me. Do you think that she's now realizing that the mayor is as unpleasant as he was to her, let's say, that he was kind of the source of her power?
Well, how many times did she wield the I'm Mrs. Blake, the mayor's wife, throughout this episode? So she could cry and complain all she wants about Blake, but she certainly never hesitated to cash in on the currency of his name.
Yeah, and I think now she's realizing that she's lost her currency.
Yeah, she's lost the sword that she was wielding for the last 18, 19 episodes, Mike. Now she's not even the mayor's wife anymore. She's just a woman constituent of San Francisco, and we know how low on the totem pole they are, and she now knows how low on the totem pole she is. Her dad's gone. Her husband's gone. She's got some money probably, but she doesn't have any juice left in San Francisco.
Oh, maybe she could start dating Buckley.
We see Mai Ling now working on Atoy. Atoy is in some serious pain, and this is where we hear this backstory of Mai Ling's tale of being married to the warlord, the one obviously that she married to save Assam's butt from, which we learned in the backstory. And she shares exactly what it was like for her.
Yeah, she was apparently in charge of dressing the wounds of his tongue, and she would also get blamed, I guess, if they didn't survive.
Right.
And so basically, we just learn another element of abuse. And here's where I won't say they're bonding, but they're realizing that they're not that different. That they both have, and actually, they pretty much say it, that they both. What did Atoy say? That we both we became people we didn't want to because we had to, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Atoy first says, everything I've done since I came to America, so I don't have to feel like this ever again, because she suffered as well. And there she is. And then she asks, why are you helping me? To Mai Ling. And that's when Mai Ling says, it's the least I can do. After all, I'm hiding in your house.
Well, I guess she has a sense of etiquette, if nothing else.
Here's the line that you were talking about, Mike. The conversation between the two of them continues, and when Mai Ling says to Atoy that I'm helping you because I'm hiding in your house, it's the least I can do. And she says, besides, today we're all Chinese, they're not, and that's what matters. Tomorrow we can go back to our to dicing one another. And Atoy says, we do terrible things to not go back to what we were. So I actually wrote down the closing sentence to this line. I wrote down to this scene. I wrote down, so now they actually understand each other. The point you just made.
Yeah, and that was the most poignant scene in the episode, I think.
Yes, number one, just ahead of the Father June, Young June hug it out moment. Let's go back outside, shall we? Where Assam is now a one-man gang, and the denizens of the Chinatown are watching from like their balconies now. They're looking down and they're seeing Assam just clean house, and they're clearly transfixed by his prowess, Mike.
Yeah, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, why don't you help him?
I was wondering that too. I'm like, come on, you chicken shits, get off that balcony and get down there and fight.
At least throw something. Throw something, a pot.
Anything, right? Spill some hot water on him. Do anything.
Something, right? Listen, this ain't Friday Night Fights. Help out.
Unbelievable, right? Like, it's all right that everyone else is laying there dead, the other poor Chinese people, but and those were all men, by the way, up on the balcony. They were not women and children watching. I might add that as well. This is when the cops show up in force now, en masse. It's not just Lee and O'Hara and the couple of stragglers that ran in there with them. They're now on horseback to clear the scene. I think we even see the chief in there with a megaphone shout, one of them old timey paper megaphones they used to use at ball games in 1908, 1800s, yelling at everybody to break it up. And we see Leary again. Now, after the police are clearing things out, and we're back in the Banshee, and it looks like an infirmary in there, Mike.
Yeah. There's a bunch of battered Irishmen laying around.
Pain, bloody, and broken. That's what they looked like to me. And you could see Leary don't like this at all, and his anger is building and building. Actor does a great job, by the way. I might add, actor does a great job of conveying his building anger without saying a word right here.
Yeah, you just cannot underestimate the acting on this show. They're such good actors. So much of it works. The writing, the acting, it's so underrated. It's just a crime how underrated it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And all these things are now starting to come to a head, and that is where the scene ends, with Leary's building anger becoming more and more obvious. Now we see Assam, Young Jun, and Hong. They're walking, they're bloodied, their shirts are untucked, their jackets, their hair's a mess. It's clearly after the battle has calmed down, and they are approaching just outside the Banshee where Jacob is hanging. Yeah. Bill shows up and he tries to stop him right away.
Yeah, he thinks they're there for another fight, but they are there for Jacob. And I take back what I said, that the scene with Mai Ling and Atoy was the most poignant. This might have been the most poignant scene in the episode.
Another good point, Mike. This is where they take down Jacob, and they kind of do this in a very respectful way, right? Lowering him slowly and carrying him carefully. And you could see that Assam is sad. It's visible on his face. Same for Young Jun and Hong, but I think Assam is a little more sad because he did know the guy a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in a sense his wingman in helping arrange his liaisons with Penny. He helped him arrange the first one, right? He came with the message and said, "Hey, come to this address." So, so he knew Jacob, so he had a little bit more of invested in a sense in his death. But interestingly, Bill O'Hara appears to be a little bit sad too by the scene.
Yeah, I think everyone sort of had a little bit of a sense of respect for this. It's over and let them. There was a little bit of unspoken respect there, I think, at least between Bill and Assam.
I think you might be right about that. And if it's not a respect, it's at the very least a sympathy or an empathy for the way Jacob got killed, because it was Bill's responsibility at that point to protect Jacob as an officer.
That's a good point,
right?
That's a very good point.
He lost control of it, and he didn't have the stones to stand up to his own kind in the manner he needed to as a cop. If he starts firing, they all back off, and that scene ends.
Yeah.
So it's on Bill a little bit too. I won't put all of it on him. But I put a good amount of it on him, though, for the fact that Jacob wasn't able to be transported safely to answer the questions that probably still would have gotten him killed anyway. Leary is watching this from his doorway, and you could see he is very unsympathetic, right? The opposite of what Bill's face looked like when they were lowering Jacob. Leary's face was much more unsympathetic. And as Assam is walking with the other two guys and they're holding Jacob, Assam and Leary doing the stare down.
Yeah.
They're doing the stare down. No words are being spoken, right? And again, the quality of the acting here, where their eyes are saying everything to each other and to us, and boom, episode.
Yeah.
Powerful, great, bloody, gory, strong, all of this, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great penultimate episode for the season. Yeah, because it's setting you up for the season finale, whatever that is. And I can only assume that there's going to be some interactions between Assam and Leary, and their interactions, verbal, have been great. So I'm looking forward to that. I what I loved about this was there was so much that was done without words.
Yeah.
And showing you that even in a scene with physicality, like with fighting, you can convey a story. And kind of like as look, I'm an old school wrestling fan, and they told stories with their bodies, and they told stories in this episode with their bodies as well. And I appreciate that. It's can't say enough good things.
Yeah, I like that observation, Mike, and I'll throw another one at you too. The other thing I really loved about this episode is that, with the exception of the single cutaway to Mayor Blake's house for the Sophie Penny interaction, the entire episode takes place in like a 3-block radius. It doesn't go from anywhere else between the Banshee and Chinatown, and there's nothing else, just that strip of block connecting the two. And the episode didn't leave that vicinity. And I thought that was almost like its own bottle episode, but with all the characters in it.
Interesting observation. That's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, I really loved it. And I cannot wait to see what's coming in episode 10, the final episode of season 2. Mike, we will have made it through 2/3 of the series by the time our next episode concludes.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that one. Hey, if you're a new subscriber, please tell your friends to like and subscribe. If you're a viewer that hasn't subscribed yet, please do so and spread the word and share this with everybody. And also watch the show on Netflix and upvote the hell out of it, please. We're going to wrap it up now. That is it for episode 9, season 2 of Warrior. We will see you next time. Adios.